Hey everybody, we figured we'd do a walk around of our camper and our truck setup, just so you have an idea of what we're doing and what we got and how we're going across Alaska. So I'll go over some of the basic stuff and we'll do a walk around to the outside, and I'll talk about some of the modifications I did to both the truck and the camper, and then we'll go on the inside and we'll go through that. Overall, it's a 1996 Ford F250. It's a sport cab, so it's got an extended cab, but it's still a two-door, and it's a short bed. It's 4x4, and it's got the 460 V8 and an automatic transmission. It's been really great for pulling our camper. We've had no problems with it. It's been pretty reliable for us, aside from the transmission issues that you might have heard about, but that's kind of my own bad for how I was driving the truck. And yeah, it's the only downfalls to this truck is it gets really bad gas mileage because it's got a really big V8 in it, but it can have the camper in the back and it can tow a car or whatever you might want with that. The camper itself is a 1982 four-wheel camper Grandby. I think it's a 1982 from what I can see. It's definitely a Grandby. It's an 8-foot camper. We have it in a 6.5-foot bed. We'll show that in a little bit, but that hasn't really been much of a problem for us either. Since we're standing by the truck, I'll just talk about the things we did to that to get it ready to go. Bunch of maintenance, suspension work, had it looked at by a shop, done all the fluids and stuff. I put manual locking hubs on it because those are a known thing to break. We also put some off-road lights on it, which we haven't really needed because it's really bright in Alaska. The sun sets at like 11:30 and raises at 4 in the morning, so we don't really need those. We also have a winch, 12,000-pound winch hidden behind the bumper. That's just something for extra security in case we go off-roading and get stuck somewhere. And we also have a front-mounted tow hitch. That's for mounting the winch, but it also gives us options. If we wanted to, we could hang a motorcycle off the front or a bike rack or things like that. So that's just another little feature. It also gives us some nice recovery points if we needed to winch ourselves off of out of a sticky situation. In the truck interior, we also added a little wooden storage organizer. There's normally a seat back here, but we pulled it out because you can't really fit anybody except for children back there. So we pulled it out and put this little wooden organizer back here, and that's been kind of just something I whipped together with some extra plywood we had from doing repairs on the camper. It gives us some extra storage and a place for the dog to sleep. You can see he's got a little bed back there that he's torn up a little bit while he was upset on the boat. Like I said, this is a 1982 four-wheel camper. You can see Tex looking out the window. We bought this camper for really cheap. It was about $1,000. These things retail for like $40, brand new. This is obviously 40 years old, and it required a bunch of repair work on it to get it ready to be used. Things that we've had to repair on it. This wood piece under here had water damage, so I had to replace this whole wood piece. That was a big old project. I resealed the entire roof. The roof was leaking in between this piece of trim right here and into the canvas. So I took that all apart and resealed it. There was a hole in the roof that I had to patch. This whole front piece was also missing the window, so I had to repaint this front piece. You can see it doesn't quite match color-wise. And I put the window back in and resealed that all up. That's about it for exterior repairs. As far as mods to the camper, we added gas roof struts. That's about $70 worth of parts, and it takes about an hour to install. And if you have one of these campers and you don't have those, by all means do that. It's a huge, huge improvement over just lifting it manually. It's a lot more safe because it controls it. Those are 37-inch struts, and they're 20 pounds each. There's a great video from Four Wheel Campers. It's about an hour long, talking about how to add those to your camper. So I highly recommend watching that video and installing those. They say get 30 or 40 pound gas struts. Even with 2 solar panels and an upgraded fan on the roof, those proved to be way too stiff. So we went down to 20 pounds, and that is actually perfect for what we need. On the outside, I added this water fill. The water tank used to be in the cabinets, which we'll show, and you'd fill it from the back. But we got rid of that and put a much bigger tank in it. We'll show that in a little bit, but this is where you fill it. So there's a little water fill. You can either pour water in there, or I have another cap with a hose adapter, so you can connect your hose right to this and screw it on and fill it right up. There's a little vent, and you fill it until water comes out of the vent, and then you know the tank is full. We have some refrigerator provisions in here. We added a refrigerator. This camper came with a ice box, but we upgraded to a refrigerator. This is a vent fan. It's a like 120 millimeter computer fan. that's just wired into the refrigerator, and when the fan on the fridge kicks on, this kicks on and exhausts hot air out. We also added a fridge drain. You can actually see it's draining a little bit of water right here. All that does is if you spill something in the fridge or something goes bad or you gotta wash it out or whatever, it allows you to drain water out of the refrigerator. And there was already a hole for the ice box. The ice box that came with this had a drain, so I just added that in because I had the tubing for it. While we're over here, I'll also mention that this truck has 2 gas tanks, which is great because it gets really bad gas mileage, and having 2 tanks essentially gives us like 300 or 400 miles of range. We haven't had any issues running out of gas, at least. Oh, I'll also mention we have some nice Toyo Open Country AT3 tires. These are a really high quality tire. We haven't had any issues with them whatsoever. They're really nice and quiet on the road, and they air down really well, which is really nice. And we're also carrying a 5th full-size spare with a matching tire. I figured we'd just bring the tire so we have it. If we pop the tire, we can get it swapped out and not have any issues. Moving on down the camper, we have an exterior shower, but it's just a little shower head, and we can cover that in a little bit. There's also a little shower head holder right here that positions the shower head about here, so I can stand under here and take a shower. This is the sink drain. This is gray water. Gray water drains out of here. It's just a little hose cap, and we have a hose on it to direct water to keep it from going on the truck. Also, some national parks require that you collect your gray water and bring it out, and so this hose would allow us to put that into a little container to collect the gray water if we wanted to. This is stock part of the camper. We have a 15-pound propane tank in here. This is kind of the locker for all the stuff that gets used outside. A Starlink connection here for our Starlink 3. It's just an Ethernet port right there. I added that in. Ball siphon in here for if we have a water jug that we need to fill the water in. Instead of trying to pour it in, we can use that siphon to. There's also a 25-foot hose in here. That's really useful for filling up the water tank. Tucked back there, we also have some water filters. Even if it's potable water, it's a good idea to filter it. You can also see over here how much the camper hangs out at the back. We just have the tailgate open. Like I said, we haven't really had any problems with it. We've done some heavy off-roading and it hasn't been an issue so far. You could also see this wire up here. We have a Starlink 3 dish on the roof. We opted to not hard mount the Starlink just so that if we were in a location where we parked the camper and we're under trees and whatnot, we can then move the dish out to an area where it has less obstruction. Moving on to the back of the camper, this is the door to the camper. My dad rebuilt it. This camper came with a door holder that was a kind of a plunger, and you had to really push on the door to get it to latch into that. And because of that, it was causing the door to wobble and get loose. Back here, you can also see this is the exhaust for the heater. This thing has a propane heater, which is really lovely. And it exhausts out here. And this is also an exhaust for a Campilux on-demand hot water heater. That's something we added to this camper for showering and doing dishes and whatnot. It's not meant to be mounted indoors, but we ended up making a metal enclosure to exhaust the gas for it, and it comes out of this vent right here, and it's worked pretty well for us, all things considered. One last thing to note is this is the new door latch we added. This is actually exactly like the ones they put on the new 4-wheel campers, and we just threw it up there. It's a little bit annoying because you have to physically latch it, but it keeps the door from getting damaged when you're opening and closing it. This is the back of the camper. You can see the gas struts up here. You can also see this is an exterior porch light that got. This came with a porch light, but it was really crusty, so I bought a $10 one off Amazon that's LED. Another thing when I upgraded this light is I made sure to get one with an amber lens, just because that helps with bugs at night. At the back here we have a bug net. You can see we have a little bit of space on the tailgate where the camper stops, and it's a little shelf you can kind of put stuff on there, which is actually kind of nice. We also have a extended hitch bowl with this little step, which is helpful for getting in and out of the camper. It also allows us to tow a trailer if we want. This step is kind of crappy. It kind of broke on us a little bit, but it's nice. We also have a nice sticker from our friend Trevor. We love Marty Robbins, so we had to throw that on there. Moving around to this side, not much exciting. This is pretty much stock as the camper came from the factory. I will note that part of repairing this camper is I replaced all these rubber seals. I replaced a lot of these screws, and I resealed a lot of the screws on the inside of here. Just kind of stuff going through. There's butyl tape behind this that I replaced. Just stuff to try to get the camper more waterproof, just because things degrade over time and this camper is 40 years old. I will mention one interesting thing about traveling through Alaska is we've actually seen a ton of four-wheel campers. It's a pretty common thing up here. These things have not changed a lot in construction since they made them. This 1982 model is really similar to a lot of the newer models. Like the trim, the roof on is the same, and a lot of the trim is the same. They're really, really similar. So I wouldn't be afraid of getting an older four-wheel camper model. Just know that you might have to do a little bit more work to get it up to par. One thing that I would have liked to have known when we bought this camper is to really keep an eye out for the canvas. The canvas and the roof on this camper are for sure the worst things on it condition-wise. There's leaks and cracks, and it shrank in the front. But it's definitely something you want to keep an eye out for. You also want to keep an eye out for the roof and holes in the roof and things like that. So here on the roof, you can kind of see some of the work that we did. We have our Starlink 3 dish right here, like I mentioned. That's just kind of hanging out there. We have that patch that I talked about. That was a big hole in the roof that I had to take care of. You can also see our Max Air fan right there. This just had a vent in it, but it's a standard 14-inch hole, so we're able to put a Max Air fan in there. And you can also see our 2 Renogy solar panels and the solar gland that I put in to get those panels installed. That's 200 watts of solar up there, and they're screwed into the actual structure of the roof. All right, here we are in the interior of the four-wheel camper. I'm gonna preface this by saying I am 6'8" tall, so this kind of gives you, if I'm standing full up, this is what I'm like, but if you are like 6'3", or 6'4", you could probably stand up in this thing without a problem.
For reference, I'm like 5'7", 5'6", 5'7", and I have a decent amount of headroom above me.
The interior of this camper is actually pretty stock from what it came from in 1982 as far as the cabinetry goes. We didn't do much as far as changing the cabinetry or the layout of the cabinets. This is kind of the main kitchenette piece right here. You can see it's got this slide out drawer that we use for our silverware, and it's kind of a junk drawer. There's also this big slider right here where we kind of keep all of our cookware and things like that. I will mention that the original four-wheel camper, the way that this came, there was a big water tank that was in this area right here. It was about an 8-gallon water tank that you would fill from the back. We got rid of that, which allowed us to put in a bigger sink, which I'll show you in a minute here, and it also gives us a lot more storage space back behind this slider, so we gained some storage space by doing that. We have some controls over here. This thermostat is the thermostat for our propane heater. You can turn it on and off, and you can set the temperature, and that will kick the propane heater on or off automatically to keep it nice and warm in here. The actual heater for the camper is behind this panel right here, and this is the output for it, and it just shoots hot air right out of this vent. We've actually found that the propane heater does a really good job of keeping it warm in here. We've had some very cold nights in here, and even with the canvas, it hasn't been a problem at all with the propane heater. It does use a decent amount of propane, but you could have multiple nights of this thing running all night long and not have an issue. Over here, this switch panel, this was originally one single switch, and I added a second switch on here. This first switch here turns on that exterior light that we were looking at earlier. The second switch turns on our water pump. You want to put your water pump on a switch so that you don't accidentally turn your water on while you're driving, or if your tank runs out of water, your pump will run automatically. The pump is set up to run to reach a certain pressure and then turn off. So if there's no water, it can't pressurize the system and it'll run and burn up your pumps. You want to put it on a switch. Another thing is this USB charger right here. This is something that I added. It's got a USB-C port and a USB-A port, and this is kind of just a nice little feature that we added to be able to charge your phone and things like that. There's a couple more of them that I added into the camper in the bed area for charging our phones while we're in the bed. I also made a whole custom wiring harness for this camper just because the basic wiring that came with it wasn't suitable for our needs. But yeah, there's some whole custom wiring and stuff behind here. We also added this little dish towel rack here, and we got a nice little dish towel from our favorite hardware store in Boulder, McGuckins. Shout out to McGuckins, we love McGuckins. There's also a couple more sliders with storage. We kind of use that for our pantry. I would open them up, but they're kind of a pain in the ass to open. I don't know what happened. I need to sand them down a little bit because I don't know if the camper moved over time or whatever, but they're really sticky, so I gotta fix that. This hatch down here is a hatch that I added. This is actually a deck hatch for a boat, but I added it in here to access the mounting system for the camper. So Modern four-wheel campers, new ones, they use a turnbuckle system where there's an eye bolt in your truck bed and an eye bolt in the camper, and it squeezes it together to hold the camper down. These older campers, a lot of people just bolted them straight through their truck beds. I didn't want to do that because it would make it more difficult to remove this camper, so I actually upgraded the mounting system on this one to use the turnbuckles like the modern campers. And so this hatch gives me access to a space that's in the truck bed where the turnbuckle is. The way that this camper is set up, your truck bed will have wheel wells that will come into the floor plan of the truck bed. And so this camper is designed to fit between those wheel wells, but that leaves space in front of the wheel wells and behind the wheel wells that's unused and potentially inaccessible. So this door allows me to go from the inside of the camper into that wheel well space where the turnbuckle is, so I can mount my turnbuckle and adjust it. And it also gives me a bunch of extra storage space. So this is kind of like our garage storage space, and I have a bunch of truck parts and tools and things like that jammed into here, just stuff that's easily accessible because this is actually the easiest hatch to get to. So I just cut a big hole in here and put this hatch in here. Really quick, we'll touch on the flooring. This had a parquet vinyl floor that was really trashed. We ripped that out and we put in, Gracie put in this vinyl floor peel and stick, excuse me, floor with some construction adhesive. It's been pretty solid. It's kind of bumpy, it's kind of whatever, but it's perfect for our needs, and you don't really see it anyways because we have these nice floor mats that kind of help keep your feet warm on the cold floor and give you some padding when you're in the truck. Moving on down on this guy, we have this Dometic 65-liter fridge that we have installed here. You can see it's full of all kinds of things. It's got a freezer that produces ice. You can also pull that freezer out and just have more fridge storage space if you wish. We loved it. It hasn't been a problem for us. We can get multiple days of food in there, no problem. Moving on to the top here, this we have a little 2-burner propane cooktop. This is stock. This is what came with the camper. We didn't see any need to change it, especially since we already had the propane heater and the propane hot water heater. We figured we'd just keep it instead of changing it out for something else. It's been great, and there's a little hook to keep the top up.
This is not obviously a full-size range, and with cooking, it was really important for me to have sets of pots that fit on top of the range and didn't really obstruct each other. I also wanted to get stacking pots so that they were easy to put away. I've really enjoyed our cooking setup, and it's been really easy to cook on it, so long as you are kind of limiting yourself to a 2-pan meal maximum. Let me show you the pans that we primarily use and their size. Just so you know, we documented everything that we bought for this camper, and so we're gonna link a spreadsheet in the description of all the stuff we bought that's specific to this camper. Mostly what I use while cooking are these 2 pots. They're pretty small and they have removable handles, so you just clip it like that, and then this one fits here just great. Same thing with this one. So these are probably, I don't know, 7-inch pans and maybe like a 5 or 6-inch pot. This set came with bigger options, so this morning when I was cooking bacon and hash browns, I used the 10-inch diameter pot with the smaller one. You can see they both fit.
I'm also going to jump in here and add really quick that the removable handle is really nice for washing the dishes. With a smaller sink, being able to remove the handle makes it way easier to maneuver the pot in the sink and clean it. So one other thing we did to this camper is it did come with a sink, but it was a really shallow sink, and this little plate right here is actually covering up where you used to have a hand pump faucet. So we got rid of that, and because we freed up space underneath this sink, we were able to put in a much deeper sink, which is really nice for doing dishes. We bought this sink off of Amazon. It'll be in the link of stuff. It's just a bar sink. It uses the regular drain that was already installed in place for the old sink. It's got a folding faucet head, which is good for when the camper comes down. It won't interfere with the roof. It also twists, which is really nice, and it also has the capability for hot and cold water. So there's a hot inlet and a cold inlet, so we can use our hot water heater with this sink. I'll switch the pump on. You can see that's hot water, and then that's cold water. So it has great water pressure from the pump, and it's just like using a regular sink at home. We also have a little cutting board that's set up to fit into the hole of the sink, which gives you a little bit more countertop space if you need it, and it's also a cutting board if you need it. One other thing that I'll mention is I added a plug in this kitchen countertop area for 110 volt. This runs off our inverter. It's just a regular house plug that has an extension cord wired to it that runs through the wall and goes down to our inverter that's in our utility area. So that's, I added a plug there, and there's also actually 2 plugs underneath here on this bench area. These are great for if you're working on the table, charging your laptop or whatever. Also have a table in our camper here. This tabletop is actually a factory 4-wheel camper piece out of one of these vintage campers. You can see that the wood pattern on it matches the countertop. These from the factory had just a single pole mount, and they didn't really move all that much. We bought a knockoff Lagun table mount that Tex just smacked his head into, and it works pretty well. The one thing to be careful about is making sure that you don't have the table on it when you're in motion, because it can damage the table mount bushings. I'm sitting on the stock bench that came with this camper. This bench has a bunch of storage underneath. We keep you know, fly fishing rods, chairs, things like that in here. There's also a composting toilet. Another thing to note on this guy is that it can be converted into a bed if you want to sleep more people in here. It actually makes quite a big bed. This back has some legs that come off, and it latches into the side of the bottom. One thing to note is we added a little latch here on the back. This keeps this back piece from flopping off if you're going over hard roads and things like that. Now that we're back here, you can see we have a little bit of a slider guy where we keep some of our trash bags and stuff like that. It goes all the way over. So these are great for storage. There's a secondary slider up here where we keep some more, you know, household stuff and coffee and whatnot. There's also a nice big window back here. These windows fold open. The whole big panel opens up as well. And we have some blackout curtains, as you can see here. They're just tied up, but these are blackout curtains that we use when we're getting ready to go to bed.
The thing that I ended up having to modify was the blackout curtains. This didn't come with curtains, so we bought them. The curtain rods were already there. It was really hard to find curtains that already fit the size of our windows. For the most part, I was able to do that. So the curtains for the smaller windows and the back window, I didn't really have to modify, but these ones I did. And I just bought 2 smaller curtains and then sewed them together in the middle there. And then I shortened them up just a little bit so that they would fit a little better and slide a little better back and forth. Another thing you might notice is when Henry pulled the bench back, you could tell that this was a cover. The original upholstery on this camper is actually really cool. It's very 70s, 80s, and we really liked it, but it was already getting tattered, and I just wanted to protect the originality of it without losing the functionality of it.
And in addition to that, it was really staticky and rough. So it was kind of actually uncomfortable to sit on it, especially with bearskin. Kind of the front bench area, you can also sleep somebody over here. It's kind of underneath our bed when our bed's fully pulled out. Right now the bed is fully pulled out. Tex tends to sleep in this corner over here. That's kind of his spot if he's not trying to bully his way into our bed. We also keep our wardrobes down here generally when we're in motion, and a lot of stuff just kind of gets packed on this bench when we start to pack up camp and get ready to go. Underneath these guys, that's where kind of all of our battery water systems are. Here we are at the wall at the very back or front of the camper, depending on how you're looking at it. There's a lot going on here, even though it doesn't look like it. One thing to note is this window here does slide open, and we do have a sliding window in the back of our truck, so you can actually pass through into the camper from the truck while you are driving, or while somebody is driving, obviously. It's legal in many states, not all states, so make sure you read up on that before you do it. Okay, so I took the benches off, and you can kind of see our utility area. This is where we keep all of our water and electrical system, and where all the wiring runs to. So we have a 20-gallon water tank here. Again, a huge tank compared to what came with this, that allows us to go multiple days without having to fill up. We can take showers, we can do dishes. It's been great, and we've really loved having the extra capacity. These are 3 Lifetime 100 amp hour lithium ion batteries. This is our battery bank. It's been awesome. It has done everything that we needed to do, and we haven't even come close. I don't think we've ever passed below 50% battery on it. Another thing to note about these batteries is that they're a mini form factor, so they're actually really small for a 100 amp hour battery, which is really great. It allowed us to get extra capacity in this area. You can see some of the wiring in here. Now we got a main fuse, we got a battery cutoff. You can see some of the plumbing that goes down to the pump. This is our pump, it's a SureFlow pump. You can see we got a filter and a cutoff for the water tank. So these systems are all designed in a way where I could shut them all off individually if I need to do work on them. We also have this little switch here is for our Starlink. You can actually see we got a Starlink router mounted permanently here, and it's on a 12-volt conversion, and there's actually an Ethernet cable that runs up and over to that port that we showed you earlier. So this is all hard mounted, so when we get to camp, all we need to do is flip on the power switch and plug in the dish, and then our Starlink is up and running. So that's been really nice as well. Like I said, this is a little 12-volt to 57-volt converter that allows us to run the Starlink off of 12-volt instead of having to use the inverter. We also have our Victron equipment. This is our DC to DC charger that allows us to charge the batteries from the truck alternator when the truck is running. We have a smart solar controller that allows us to charge our batteries with our solar panels. There's a smart shunt down there, and there's some additional bus bars and things like that. I also have this all set up where each of these things is on its own circuit breaker, so I could just push this button and isolate this and shut it off from the rest of the system if I needed to do work on it. Right here is also our inverter. This is a 2000 watt Renogy inverter. It's overkill, but we got it so that we could have gaming computers at some point in time, because Gracie and I both love to game. You can kind of see some of the connections for the power cables back there. And this is also set up in a way where this whole panel can come out, and I can pull this whole thing out and do work to the system if I need to. One other thing to note is there's a strap on the battery, on the water tank, to keep it in place. There's also some blocking down here to keep these batteries in place, so that's how they stay. There's a little block here, and that's how they stay in place. Again, I can go into the system in more detail on why I built it that way. We actually just measured this whole thing out and designed this to fit in the way it did. So we ordered stuff specifically so that it would fit in this area. Like, this water tank barely fits in there, but we just did some planning ahead of time to jam as much stuff in here as we possibly could. Also over here you can see I was talking earlier about how there's access into the wheel well area that you can normally not get to. There's these little panels that you can remove, and you can jam a whole bunch of stuff in here. So I have a bunch of tools and truck parts and extra things that I don't access frequently but wanted to bring on the trip. So there's one on that side, and there's one on that side as well, and there's also one in the back corner near the door, aside from the one that I showed you already with the hatch. And those are all stuck. Those all come, the camper comes that way from factory. I added the one with the deck hatch. The last area is kind of the upper part of the camper that we'll talk about. So like I said, this is our bed. It's much larger than the stock bed, which is really great. We'll show you some video of us getting in and out of the bed so you kind of have a sense of how big it is, and how much space there is between it and the roof.
All right, so another thing that I'm going to include in the spreadsheet that's linked is all of the measurements and dimensions of everything up here. We modified this bed to make it bigger. Henry and I are both not small people, and the original bed that came with this was just bigger than a twin, basically. We ended up modifying this to be the size of a full-size bed. We actually added 10 inches to the size of this bed. What we did in order to get the mattress right was, this is actually a foldable mattress, and we bought a king-size tri-fold mattress, and 2 of the 3 folds of the tri-fold mattress is the size of a full-size mattress. So
if you turn it 90 degrees.
Yeah, you have to turn it 90 degrees. We're able to get a foam mattress pad, and we also brought our inflatable camping pads for underneath, just to add a little bit of extra comfort. Henry and I are both side sleepers, and if you're a side sleeper, you are probably very familiar with the shoulder and hip pain that comes from sleeping on something that's really hard. And so adding these extra pads, we just pull these out when we are driving, but adding these extra pads has really made it a lot more comfortable to sleep up here. But I wanted to show you all how easy it is to collapse the bed if you want to, just to get some more space in here. So yeah, let's do that. So once the bed's fully collapsed, we put all of our bedding up there, and then you have basically this whole seating area. in addition to this entire seating area. So there's actually quite a bit of space in here. A consideration is with the added 10 inches, like your head can kind of smack into this, but I never sit like this anyways. I often will sit like when I take grad class, I usually sit like right here with our table, and I just like kind of lounge. And I fit pretty perfectly underneath this, like totally comfortably.
Yep, and you can see kind of all of our stuff is just jammed on the bed up there. Up in this bed area, you can kind of actually see, we'll just pan over, you can see the canvas. This is a stock window. It has both a window covering and a, this is like a clear window cover, and then this is just screen. Get good airflow in there. When you have the fan running, you could really feel the fan pulling air through this area, which actually helps keep you cool, especially because there's a small window over here. So if you shut all the windows in this thing and crack these guys and turn the fan up on suck, it will pull air past you and keep you nice and cool, which is actually really great. I was worried that we might want to add another fan over the bed area so that we could have an intake fan and then an exhaust fan to get even more airflow, but it's been warm and we haven't needed it. This is the inside view of the Max Air fan that we installed. I just ran the wiring through the roof and out. I'll show you where the wiring runs anyways, but this has been great. We opted for the model that doesn't have the rain protector or the rain sensor, and honestly, it hasn't been that big of a deal. It's definitely worthwhile upgrading your vent to one of these guys. It makes a huge difference in the livability of the camper. You can also see these are stock lights that came with the camper. They're great. You can turn them on and off, and that was all in there from factory. But you can see this is the stock lifting mechanism for the roof. And so there's a hinge that goes across the middle of this, and there's a hinge on the bottom, and there's a hinge on the top, and it's spring loaded. And the way this works is there's a little latch that keeps it up, and then you pull this down, and then the roof will start collapsing inwards. These things are definitely something that you want to keep an eye out for if you're planning on buying a four-wheel camper used. It's really common for the roof to leak and for these things to get water damage. You can actually see this thing has water damage. It's not very structurally sound over here because it's gotten so much water on it. And these are really important because these are what hold your roof up. So you want to really inspect these things for water damage. You can replace them. Our front one was really water damaged, and actually we had to replace it. In addition to that, we have a bunch of hooks on this one because that just gives us a little bit of extra hanging space for, you know, our toiletries and things of that nature. This mirror came stock. We added a little temperature gauge to keep an eye on the temperature of things in here. You can also see some of the mold staining from when this thing was leaking really bad before we resealed the roof. Turns out that most of the leaks on our camper was actually just leaking from the trim into around the roof into the canvas itself. It's not even, the cracks in the canvas aren't even the major points of leaking, so that's something to keep in mind. Another thing to note is there's some little D-ring guys here, and when you shut the camper, there's a bungee cord that you put into place here which helps pull the canvas in so that you don't have to tuck it in once the roof is all the way shut. That was broken on ours. It's just a rivet, so I drilled the rivet out and put a new one in. Turning back to the front bed area, you can see there's this, I call it the wishbone. This guy here allows you to pull this lift plate down when you're shutting the camper. It allows you to push the lift plate up when you're opening the camper, and it also blocks the lift plate from shutting. If it's really windy, this roof will want to actually fall down on you, which we found out the hard way because this was broken on our camper. I had to repair it, but you definitely want this in here because it keeps the top of the panel pushed in, and that in concert with the little latch on the back will make sure that your roof does not fall down on you. Here, as you can see in that back corner, that's where the wiring for the solar panels and the wiring in the roof for the lights and the fan goes. It just runs behind the panel, and then there's some trim underneath here. I'll show you in a second that runs in, and it goes down into our utility panel. One thing that we didn't address with this camper is the roof. It really needs a new headliner. It really needs to be redone. I think there's probably some broken welds in the roof and things like that. So, you know, if we replace the canvas, we'll redo the roof.
All right, so we have the camper set up right now to get collapsed. So our fan is closed. No, it's not. Our fan is closed. All of our gear's down here. We have just the mattress on the bed right now, and my iPad, because that's where we keep it. The inflatable mattresses we just leave inflated on this side bench. The bungee cords are in. And Henry's now gonna pull the lift plate and lower the mattress, or lower the roof.
So the Starlink's also off the roof. That's an important thing to remember as well. All right, so we gotta latch down, and this guy's unlatched. I pull this guy, and then grab this guy, and I pull this, and we just go right down, just like that. And then now we're collapsed, and we gotta go latch it on the outside. So one thing to note is we like to put the trash, any trash we have right at the back by the door, so that if we get to a gas station or whatever, we don't have to crawl through the camper to grab it. So we'll shut the door, and you can see the canvas is sticking out here. This canvas is actually supposed to have a bungee cord that attaches it to the lift plate, so when it folds in, it pulls the canvas in. Our camper is old, and I didn't know that, and so it's broken. But if we ever replace the canvas, that's something we'll address. So we got to make sure the canvas is all hooked in there, and you can see that it's up a little bit in the front. That's because the bed is there. So what I do is I buckle it from the back to the front. So we'll do that side like that. Make sure our propane is off. And there's no latch for this door, so my head works. Take off our drain. Get that all coiled up and in here. There's also a strap on this propane tank to keep it from going anywhere. There was probably something to hold the propane tank when this thing came originally, but ours didn't have it, and so the propane tank was flopping all over the place. So I added that in there.
So you can really see just how kind of low profile the camper is when it's fully collapsed. It doesn't really come up much higher than the top of the truck. It's probably about another, I don't know, foot. What do you think? A foot taller than the truck?
It's about a foot and a half taller than the truck.
Yeah.
And the other thing to note is this camper, if you look down the side of the truck, it's not much wider, if at all, than the truck itself, which allows you to get into some tight spaces if you're off-roading.
Another thing is that the solar panels on top add a bit of height. I think if we could go back and do it again, we would have gotten more flexible, flatter solar panels so that they stick just like right to the top of the roof.
That would have also prevented us from having to drill holes in our roof.
So we thought it would be helpful to have a little segment of this video be us talking about why we chose the setup that we have.
I'll start off talking about the truck first, because in our case, the truck actually came before the camper. The truck that we have, we affectionately call Big Red. So the reason that we bought this truck, well, we bought it in a pinch because Gracie's car broke in California and we wanted to tow it home to work on it ourselves. So I ended up buying this truck to accomplish that goal. I ended up falling in love with it and we kept it. I like this generation of truck because it's kind of the last old American truck before they kind of changed how things are made. So it's kind of like the most modern version of an old truck that you can get. So it's got great visibility out the windshield, and it's really easy to get parts for. That's another thing. They produce these trucks forever. You can get parts for them anywhere at any auto parts store, even up in Alaska. It's very easy to get parts for these trucks. Pretty much any mechanic that's worked on any amount of trucks will have worked on one of these trucks before and have experience for it. So it makes it kind of really nice, like, you know, you cross your fingers and hope that you don't have a problem, but if you do, you can kind of get the stuff that you need to fix it. So, you know, it's just a really great platform. There's also a ton of aftermarket support for these trucks. You can get lift kits, you can get replacement parts. It's just a really great platform, in my opinion, in general, aside from its ability to haul a camper. With a four-wheel camper, we were looking at pop-up campers because we liked the low-profile, lightweight aspect of it. The fact that you can go off-roading with a little bit easier with a pop-up camper. I mean, I've been doing off-road camping, four-wheel camping, with my other vehicle that I have that's four-wheel drive for a very long time. I really prefer to do it that way. I think it's nice to not limit yourself to easier off-road routes. To be able to do a little bit harder off-road allows you to get a little bit further out, which could be nice to go to places that are less popular. So being able to go four-wheeling was really important to me with this whole setup. I mean, the truck is great off-road. The truck, like I said, it's pretty much stock aside from like an equivalent 33-inch metric tire and the locker that it has in the rear, which is stock, and it's super capable and it's really comfortable off-road. So we got a camper that's kind of focused towards that. In addition to that, there's a bunch of different pop-up camper brands. The four-wheel campers are designed to be really lightweight. They're made out of all aluminum, which means that they don't really strain your truck all that much, and it kind of helps with the gas mileage a little bit.
I think the dry weight of our camper was somewhere between 800 and 1,000 pounds.
Yeah, and so they're built really well, these four-wheel campers. A lot of people, there's a really big community of people that own these four-wheel campers, especially the older ones. They're aluminum framed, which means they're not going to rot like a lot of other camper brands.
Which are fiberglass frame, or even wooden.
Yeah, and so, you know, they're kind of built to last. So yeah, we specifically were looking for a four-wheel camper for all those reasons. You know, lightweight, meant to go off-road, huge aftermarket community. It's really easy to get parts for. Again, I do own a Suzuki Samurai that's set up for rock crawling, and it's really miserable to drive on the highway, but I've wanted to take it places like Moab, which are it's like 6 hours away from where we live in Colorado, and I would never drive it there, but I now have the option to have the camper in the back of the truck and tow my Samurai to places I want to off-road it. So that was another huge plus for me with this setup. Another huge benefit to this setup and truck bed-based setups, it's very easy to remove this thing out of our bed of our truck. So it's kind of a self-contained unit. All of the stuff for the camper stays in the camper, and we can just lift it out of the bed and drive the truck out from underneath it. And then I have a regular pickup truck that I can use for hauling motorcycles or lumber or whatever it is that I might want to do with it. Overall, I would say we've been very happy with the setup.
So that's our rig.
Would we recommend it? Yeah, absolutely.